Welcome to A Living History of Bronxville. This will be the 12th year that we've been taping villagers and people from the community around us regarding their involvement in the community and the history of Bronxville. And we've kept and are keeping all these tapes in the history room. My name is Marcia Lee, and we are very delighted to have with us today two people who've been involved in history for a long time. Both of them have lived in Bronxville at one point or another. One of them is Katie Hite, who actually is the former president of the Junior League, and we'll go over that a little bit.
Yes.
But now is the director of or executive director of the Westchester Historical Society. The other person is the author of a book we're going to be discussing today. His name is Gray Williams. And the Historical Society and Gray Williams have just published the most magnificent book called Picturing Our Past, the National Register Sites in Westchester County. And by the time we get done, I think you'll all want to run out and buy one, but it is really amazing how they put this together. Welcome, Gray.
Thank you.
Katie, we're so delighted to have you here today.
We're delighted to be here.
We usually begin just by getting a little background on the two of you. Before we go on to just discuss, this book has how many pages?
492.
492 pages. It's like this.
It's
and
pretty
it's
fat.
colored. And it's colored.
It's actually color throughout. If something is in color, it's in color.
It's in color. And you took most of the photographs.
I took the current outdoor photographs.
And a lot of them are juxtaposition to the old building when a photo was taken a long time ago.
Or a print was made.
It's amazing, and it's done a lot in chronological order, so it's just really very unique.
It gives you a really good view of Westchester history.
Yeah. Katie, let's just jump in for a second now. You were born in Wisconsin.
I was born in Wisconsin.
And you went to Northwestern,
Yes,
got a
I
political
did.
science degree in English. But just tell us really quickly how you've been involved in the Bronxville community.
Oh, well, I've lived here since 1969. Raised my children here. One of them still lives in the Westchester area. He and my grandchildren and his wife live in Briarcliff Manor. The other one is in Virginia. And I've been involved in many things in Westchester and in the Bronxville area. The Community Planning Council of Yonkers, been associated with that organization for many years. I was president of the Public Health Nursing Organization of Eastchester, which is now Lawrence Home Care. And for many years, I was president of the Mount Vernon Daycare Center.
Right, and you were also president of the Junior League.
Yes, I was.
So all that good volunteer experience led to this wonderful job as being
Yes, it
director
did.
of the Westchester Historical
Yes.
Society. That's
Yes.
wonderful. Gray, you've had a wonderful background in producing books and everything as preparation for this magnificent book. What have you done prior to this?
My background is largely in illustrated books and educational media.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in book publishing ever since I got out of college, and sort of went into illustrated books. I edited books at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Metropolitan Museum of Art and Museum of Modern Art.
Mm-hmm.
And then for many years I was in educational media. And so I've gravitated into writing and photographing, and this is sort of a culmination of all that. I've never done anything this big.
I can't imagine that there are more than a handful of people in the whole United
who
States
ever
that
have
ever done
exactly
anything this this big. Well, let's begin. I mean, how did you come up with this idea? Now, you only do the sites that are on the National Register,
We
right?
decided to use that as our point of reference, the
Right.
sites on the National Register. And we wanted to tell the story of Westchester's history in a way that had not been done before.
Right.
And we thought that the architecture and the history had a certain
Meshing together.
meshing together.
Right.
And it has turned out
To
that
be.
way. When you
And
read the
Bronxville
text,
is on the historic.
Oh yes,
So this is going to be, you're going to
Bronxville's-
see some really nice pictures of Bronxville. in this book.
Bronxville's historic district is large.
It's the largest.
And
It's the largest in Westchester County.
Lawrence Park is the largest single historic district.
It
Isn't
has
that
over
something?
30.
75.
75? Oh my goodness, 75.
Well, I
Something
remember
in
well
that
when
zone. Yeah.
Gene Bartlett, who was our local historian, set about to pull this all together and get us on the historic
Terrific
site. Yeah.
job to
So-
get everybody to cooperate.
It was, and there were a number of people in Bronxville at the time. This was in the 70s. That weren't quite sure they wanted to be on that site.
That is a problem with the National Register. Lots of people think that as homeowners they will be restricted from doing things they want to do if they're on the National Register.
Isn't that true? That's not true?
In fact, it is not true. The only protection that the National Register provides is its public relations value. You can explain to the community why this building is worthy of saving in the state that
Right.
it is.
If you want to put in electrical
But if you-
air conditioning or something, you can go ahead and do
Go
that.
ahead.
you can
do
do
it.
it.
You want to paint your house pink,
Yes,
you can do that.
You
Purple.
could paint it purple if you wanted to. The only time you're restricted as a homeowner is when the laws are at your local level.
That they've created, that the village or town or
And
city.
then the people who are affected by those laws have some say over what that law is.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're on the National Register or the State Register, it affords certain protection by things that the federal government might want to do. They can't build a road through your house,
Yeah.
for example. They couldn't take your house away because they would be stopped from doing that. But you yourself can do whatever you please.
Yeah. Well, how many sites are there in Westchester County now?
There are now about 165. Now remember, a site can be either
Yeah,
an
what is a
individual-
site? What is a
It
site?
can be an individual property or building. Mm-hmm. It can be a district like Lawrence Park with 60, 75 buildings in it. It can be the old Croton Aqueduct, which runs from Croton to the Bronx.
Uh-huh.
So this covers quite a range. It can be the Bear Mountain Bridge.
Right.
Be
Is there a certain panache with, I mean, does your property value immediately go up,
some
twofold?
some real estate dealers will tell you yes.
Yes.
It
And
doesn't
others
hurt.
will tell you no,
Right,
because people misunderstand
Yeah.
what it means.
right.
But by and large, if you have a historic home and you get on the National Register, the chances are that whoever wants that home after you is also interested in history. And the idea that it's on the National Register is attractive. And yes,
Means
I
a
think
lot.
the real estate dealers are right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are real estate agents that specialize in this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, now, how did you come up with the idea to do this? I mean, to make it sequential? You've got certain periods that you cover, don't you?
Yes.
What are the periods that you cover here? How did you break it up?
There's 6,
Yeah.
and it's sort of a natural break. Colonial, up through the war, the Revolution.
Right.
Then federal, the rebuilding after the terrible destruction in Westchester during the Revolutionary War.
Oh, really?
We were the neutral ground, it says here. We were fought over by both sides, and they burned down a lot. That's why we really don't have very much. Anyway, after the war, during the federal period, great amount of rebuilding, confidence in the new nation. Then we have a section we call Romantic America, which is really the period from about 1835, say, to the Civil War.
Right.
When you have new forms of architecture coming along, the Gothic revival, the Italianate, Greek revival. Then after the war, bigger and better, the Gilded Age, more money coming in.
Right.
Spent sometimes not wisely, but too well.
My, how architecture
Yeah.
reveals the
Yes.
era.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there's a sort of transitional period when Westchester had its feet on sort of partly very agricultural still, partly very industrial, up to about World War I. Then the last period after World War I we call Suburban Westchester, because then indeed the suburbs really came into their own. And at least half of the people in Westchester were related by profession or some way directly to New York.
New York City.
Yeah.
And it's even now beginning to change. I mean, you'll have to do a seventh one at some point when the majority don't go into the city that, you know, they're really...
Well, they're now suburban, but they're suburbs of White Plains and
Right.
Stamford.
I know, of
and,
different...
And other rim communities as well, but there's still a lot of people who go to New York every day.
Right. Now, you've grown up in Chappaqua, right?
Essentially, I moved to Chappaqua when I was 4 years old, and off and on I've been there ever since.
Yeah. And
in a house that's about a quarter of a mile from the house that I mainly grew up in.
but you lived 2 years here in Bronxville.
When I was 2.5 to 4 years old, I lived in an apartment on, is it Bronxville Road?
Yes.
Yes, on Bronxville Road, and looked out my bedroom window at the Gramerton Hotel.
Oh, don't get me going on
Yeah.
that. I spent my life
Yeah.
for 4
Well, you remember they
6
had
years of my life were devoted to the Gramerton.
Yeah.
I have a little plaque that said
Yes.
she got her thrill on Sunset Hill.
Well,
That's
but my
great.
earliest memory is of the building and the big electric sign,
Oh, yes.
which they had.
It used to say Hot Mama.
Yes.
When Bruce Caputo and others shot away the appropriate letters for the Hotel Gramerton. Yeah. We can get off the subject here. First, just going over the book, you have 150 historic places, pictures. No, how many pictures do you have in the book?
There are 615 pictures.
Yeah.
Okay. There are, of those, there are 275 modern
That are in
photographs,
color.
all in color.
That's what makes this book
Yeah.
partly so unique, is that they're beautiful.
And the rest
Beautiful
is,
pictures.
is old, then, not now.
Right.
Some in color, some in black and white, depending on what they were originally. If it's a color painting, it's color.
Yeah. And
One
if
of
it
our
was-
sponsors of this book was Fuji Photo Film up in Valhalla. And we used Fujifilm exclusively, and they also contributed to the printing of the book. And they were very interested in preserving the sites so that somebody will be able to look back on what these places looked like in 2002, and we think that's pretty special.
That is special. That is special. And the Westchester County Historical Society is the one that's really putting it out. I mean,
We have published this book. We have published books prior to this one. Westchester County, A Pictorial History was published by us many years ago, about 1980, I think.
Yeah.
But this has been our baby from the very beginnings
get-go.
of it. We raised the money to do it. We started with an exhibit at the Hudson River Museum, and we took 36 of the sites and had a fairly extensive exhibit down there in 1998, I believe.
99.
99, sorry about that. And out of that grew interest for the book, and we were able to raise the money because, as you can imagine, 492 pages, full color throughout, is quite an expensive undertaking.
Now, there are a lot of pictures from Bronxville in here.
Yes.
Now, we have to see some of these pictures.
Well, this one won't show up very well for your camera because it's a relatively small
We
picture.
have to open. Okay. I think this will be too small. But this one, now,
But these are not Bronxville, sorry.
No, that one is not
Okay.
Bronxville.
Now, which one is this Bronxville?
No,
Here?
No.
that's the first. Here's the
Okay.
second.
Here is. Now,
That's
what
called-
house is
That's
this?
called the Eleazar House.
Uh-huh.
And it's on Bronxville Road in a very suburban area of houses that look like it but were built 200 years later. It's a lovely old house. Actually, it was built on an even older house which formed the old kitchen out behind. But it was a farmhouse on the banks of the Bronx River.
Isn't that something?
And it's still a private house.
Yeah.
Lovely.
What a gorgeous picture, and so beautifully
It's
framed.
a federal center hall house of the sort that they built in this period of expansion and regrowth after the.
And this is in the
American War.
historic site there.
That is a separate historic site
yeah.
of itself.
Okay. Now we've got some from the historic site.
Well, this is, again, maybe not big enough, but this is a Greek revival house.
Oh, yes.
It's called the Masterton Dusenberry House. It's on Route 22.
This is was owned by Amy.
Amy Dusenberry.
Yes, and then later
Miss
Frida
Amy
Riggs. And the story...
No, that house was owned by the Hansons.
Oh, by the Hansons.
Hanson.
That's right. Yeah. Wrong house. Okay.
Yeah, there's another one nearby.
So,
Frida Riggs' house was never been on the National Register. I believe it's on the county register.
Yeah.
But this was owned by, built and owned by a man who owned one of the big quarries in Tuckahoe.
Who was that?
His name was Alexander Masterton.
Oh, sure. Masterton Woods in the whole area.
And he built a house sort of on the road down where they carried the marble toward the Hutchinson River, which was navigable.
Right.
And they hauled it out from there. We have pictures, actually, see.
Of this. Let me just ask this question. This is on the site, too, but this is not in the... This is on the historic...
That is a separate site.
That is not in the district.
But it's a separate site.
It is a separate site.
That I wasn't aware of. I didn't realize.
It doesn't have to be... Let's see, what's on the other side of that sheet?
Okay, here we go.
Yes, see, here's the...
Quarry?
There's the Tuckahoe Quarry.
Now, you were telling me earlier
Then
that
and
the
now.
only village not to have a site might be Tuckahoe, right?
Tuckahoe does not seem to have a particular site of its own, no.
Right.
But they have the quarry.
Yes.
And I bet you if they got going, they could get one. So
Oh, yes.
anybody from Tuckahoe here.
That's Quarry
Yes.
Park. I'm sure it
Yeah.
isn't big enough to show on your screen. It's quite charming. They've built a big fence around it because people throw stuff in it, but you can still see it. It's quite
I've
fascinating.
seen it, yeah.
And that's all that's left. Mostly
This is
filled in.
the quarry today.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly with water in
You
it.
have to stop and get out of the car and look over the fence to get that
I know.
picture.
Yeah.
When Gray got that picture, I said, oh my heavens,
But,
I can't believe it.
The Mastertons were terribly important early citizens, very generous citizens
Yes.
of Bronxville. His sons were active. They were active in the Reformed Church here, and just generally good
They
citizens.
gave property here for public use, too, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know quite which ones they are, but
Yeah.
indeed, they were quite generous and public-spirited.
Right.
And for several generations, I mean...
We're fortunate to...
Miss Dusenberry, in her way, was very active
Yes.
in civic affairs.
She was widely known in the community when she lived here. Now you have some more. I mean, some of these I
Well,
recognize here.
Here, I think, must be... Yes, here we come to Lawrence Park, and here is William Van Duzer Lawrence himself.
Right.
And that portrait hangs at Sarah Lawrence
Yeah,
College.
yes.
So that's how you
It
got
hangs
that.
in Westlands,
Katie
yes.
used to work at Sarah Lawrence.
Yes, I did.
Well, we knew about it,
yeah.
and so we went out and had this picture taken. We really wanted to have him.
Yeah.
With his hands
He's
on
one of
his...
the few individuals in the whole book, right? I mean, you didn't...
No, we have a lot of people.
Do you have
Many,
a lot of
many.
people?
Yeah, a lot of
So you
people.
back this up not only with the pictures of the buildings but also the people.
Many
involved.
times when a site is listed on the register, it's not listed because of its architecture. It's listed because of the history that happened there.
Yeah.
And so we
Now
go
this
into
one
all of
we
that.
all recognize. Tell us about this.
Well,
is
that
the,
was the original house on the property that Lawrence built. It's called the Manor House.
right. It looks quite modern. It's always looked
Yes.
for
Well,
its time quite modern to me.
The center part of it is the earliest part, and it probably had a good deal more Victorian gingerbread on at one point.
Yeah.
But then there was an architect, I believe his name is Penrose Stout, in the
Right.
1920s.
Right.
And he added on these side wings, I wouldn't call it a truly modernist style, but still more up to date, so that it does have a very kind of contemporary horizontality to it.
Right.
But anyway, this was this was on the property.
Right. This is
They-
right off of Prescott Road,
Yes.
just as you're right from Sunset Hill. Or
Right.
And they
Bremerton
used
Court.
it before the Gramerton Inn and then hotel were built. This served as a little hotel for people who are interested in buying plots to build their houses in Lawrence Park,
Isn't
or
that
waiting
interesting?
for the houses to be finished.
Right. There were, Mr. Lawrence had built quite a few houses all in at one time, so there were a lot probably.
He
using
started
this.
out with about a half a dozen, and they sold. And he had a wonderful architect, a fellow named Bates, who did more than any other single architect in Lawrence Park, and kind of left his stamp on the whole area. He built some of them as artist studios, like the Will Lowe studio
Let's
here.
see. Oh, yes, people will know this one.
Yes.
If you don't know these, go drive up on the hill and start looking for these, because
they're
they are
wonderful.
magnificent homes. You have to sort of look at them, and you could pass them by easily. But this one is very familiar. We're still looking for a few more. How about this one?
That's one of the finest. Lawrence himself lived there for a while. It's known as Gray Arches, and it has wonderful views. In the winter, you can see the city from there. And this is the back of the building with these gray arches, wonderful porch out the back. But this is the kind of building that Mr. Bates
Would
did,
build, yeah.
and is the signatures are kind of because we have also a photograph of that as it was from an old postcard view before the trees all grew up.
Yes. Well, I mean, Bronxville is quite flattered to have so many pictures in this book. I'm sure it helped to have Katie here from Bronxville overseeing it. What distinguishes this book from other historic books? I mean, there are quite a number of historic books even now about Westchester County, right?
Well, it's surprising. There are many books about each individual village and town.
Yes.
And as we all know, Westchesterites tend to identify themselves as...
all 44 of them.
Yes, being from Bronxville or Chappaqua or Scarsdale, as opposed to being from Westchester. Coming from the Midwest, you identify yourself with the county that you grew up in. So there are not all that many, actually, that deal with Westchester as a county. And as I mentioned before, the pictorial history, which is a really good history of the county, it's been around since 1980 and was, although it's a good basic book, it doesn't have color. And we thought the blending of the history and the architecture was what made this special. And as we got into it, we realized that it was a much bigger project than we had originally thought. And it has turned out to be a real gift from the Historical Society to the public,
to Westchester County.
I don't think anybody else would have actually done this.
Well, great. I can see you out there with your camera going from community to community, finding these sites. I mean, you must have some wonderful stories to tell. I mean, what was the most dangerous shot you took?
The most dangerous, by far.
You actually know.
Oh, I know.
The quarry. You almost jumped into the quarry.
No, the quarry. I had to do it through the chain link fence. But no, the most dangerous is the little pump house on the dam at the base of the Sprain Brook Reservoir, or the former Sprain Brook Reservoir. Sprain Brook Parkway goes on either side of it.
Right.
To get into that area,
I think I know where
you
you're
have
talking.
to make a left turn off the fast lane of the Sprain Brook Parkway.
Oh.
Not an easy thing to do.
No,
I did it at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning.
I thought you were about to say I did it at 70 miles an hour.
No.
7 a.m.
No, I had to get in there. All of these pictures.
What picture gave you the most satisfaction out of doing? I mean,
I don't know. But there is. I'll tell you another funny story. One that was fun to do. There's a wonderful house, the John Draper House in Hastings. He was a scientist, pioneer photographer, and he either built or moved into a very nice federal house with a big front porch with pillars, And so I arranged to do this about midday, and went there on a sort of a warm summer day, and was setting up my camera, and they had a dog. The dog is named Billie Holiday. She's 13 years old, and a big bulldog. And she was snoozing in the front yard. But just as I was getting focused and set up, she heaved herself to her bow-legged feet and lurched over to the front porch, went about 2 or 3 steps up, flopped down, turned and smiled.
Oh, wanted to be in the picture.
Oh, yes.
Oh my, yes, a lens
Knew
louse.
exactly what you were doing.
And she's there. You can't make. She's a little on the small side of the picture, but she's there, and she obviously enjoyed having.
Well, that's great. And so we have a picture of
Yes, Billie
Billie
Holiday
Holiday
is in
right
the book.
in the middle of the
That's
book.
right.
Now, it's one thing to take pictures, but it's another thing to check the sources and to, make sure you have everything in the text right. How did you go about doing that? And where's...
We've got a lot of friends.
Yeah.
But in fact, I'm speaking of the friends at the local historical society.
You work with all the local historians.
Yes.
What a wonderful
And
way, Katie.
almost every village and town has a municipal historian. That is actually mandated
Ours
by
is
New York
Eloise
State.
Morgan.
Yes, we know Eloise.
We work actually, she's a trustee of the Westchester County Society, but we work together very closely. She helped me pick the places to photograph, provided me with the names of all the owners so I could get in touch with them.
Were the owners cooperative? I hope.
Yes.
Almost all.
Yeah.
They really all were.
Yes.
There's one who was a little questionable, but we won't want to mention any
We
names.
won't
Not
go
here.
into that.
Yeah.
Any rate, she arranged all of that. I went through all the pictures that are here, for example, in the history room. Many of the black and whites and so forth mostly come from here. And then she and Mrs. Huber, Mary Huber,
Yes, Mary was the previous historian.
reviewed the texts.
Yeah.
And it's very useful to have someone on the scene because I'm
And
a
especially
generalist.
Eloise Morgan.
Yeah,
Let me tell
yeah.
you, if she takes a look at it,
Yes,
it's going to
she
be
takes
okay.
pains, yes.
Right. So.
But by and large, that's what we did. In some cases, it was people who owned the place, or, of course, Historic Hudson Valley. They have
Helped out.
scholars working for them who are very helpful. And you get a lot of cross-fertilization among them.
And there's some really famous places that you did, like Phillips Manor.
Yeah.
And Lyndhurst.
What are the more
and
famous?
Carramore.
Carramore.
The Jay Heritage Center.
Yeah.
The Jay House
the J.
in Katona.
Homestead are all well known.
St. Paul's Church in Mount Vernon, which is the only national site.
Yeah, that's
owned
a
by the
national
National Park Service.
Right.
So we worked with, you'll see in
And
the
you have the
acknowledgement
Rockefeller
list.
estate, too, don't
Yes,
you?
Kikut.
Yeah, and
Yes.
they have an archive and some very
So
heavy
those
And
big
all
ones
of
have
those
archives.
people who are associated with those sites were consulted once the text was written. And
Actually, they
edited.
were consulted even before the text was written, when we were collecting the historical pictures. We would go to them and we'd make the contact with the people that we should deal with, and then we went back to them with the text.
How many years did this take you to do?
4.
4 years. I believe it.
It was
I
on the
believe it.
drawing boards when I walked into the Historical Society in 1996. The idea of the book, and they had already talked to Gray about doing it. So we were figuring out where the money was going to come from, and all kinds of things like that.
Now, Katie, you were a co-editor with Elizabeth Fuller, right?
Elizabeth Fuller is the librarian of this society,
And
and
her
her husband Larry gave a sizable gift, and he has dedicated this book to Elizabeth's work at the Westchester County Historical
Isn't that-
Society.
That's
which is
wonderful.
Wonderful, and she deserves every bit of it. She's been at the society for 23 years, and she is a professional librarian, and the Historical Society is where it is today because of her.
And she is also the editor of the Historian, the magazine.
Oh, let me just talk about
So Elizabeth and I do. Elizabeth and I are a duo.
A duo, yes.
I'm going to hold this up. You do it quarterly, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
this is our quarterly journal, which has been published since 1925 without interruption. Elizabeth and I are currently editing it. Several years ago, Elizabeth edited it by herself. It's wonderful fun. It's got
It has a
each
wealth
issue
of
has
topics.
2 or more likely 3 articles about Westchester history, and this particular issue has a wonderful article about a Jay descendant
Yeah.
who is also an artist. And
But let me tell you that the previous quarter,
That's
was
correct.
on the, I never say it right, but Lawrence Home Care is the current entity, and it was on the public nurses.
Mary Ellen Scarborough
wrote it.
volunteered to write the article about the history of what I still call PHNO, which is
Lawrence
what it
Home
was
Care.
for
We're
years.
having a benefit for Lawrence Home Care on the 21st,
Yes.
and Mary Ellen did it for this.
Yes.
So we were so
and
delighted.
it was a wonderful, wonderful article.
Yeah. Well, Katie and Gray, we are just delighted that you've taken time to share this with us. I'm going to show you the front page again, so you keep it in mind. Where can people get this? Well, first, it isn't quite out yet, is it?
It is
you're
not
dealing with
quite,
galley proofs.
Yes, right. We still have the galley proofs. It will be published on the 28th of September, and we're having a big party
Where
at
is
Whippy
this?
Castle in Rye.
Whippy Castle.
Whippy is an A.J. Davis building that was, for many, many years, the Rye Golf Club. It's now a separate restaurant. Actually, it's open to the public as a restaurant. It's on the Post Road, and if anybody's interested in coming, they can call us at 592-4323. We're going to have a big bash, and shortly thereafter, by probably the second week of October, they will be in your local bookstore, so you can either get it from us or you can get it from Jean at
what is
Wormrath's.
the sale
And the book
price?
is $75.
Yeah, but if they get it right now or put it in
If you get it right now and call us right away, you can get it for $65.
And you can locate the Westchester County Historical Society on the web.
On the web. So
Yes.
you have www.westchesterhistory.com.
westchesterhistory.com.
Easy enough.
Yes.
It's amazing how much has mushroomed and grown in the last 25 years on developing the histories of the villages and towns and the whole county.
It's terrific.
It's wonderful to see.
That is true. There's been a real revival of
Yeah.
interest
Yeah.
in local history generally.
It's wonderful. Well, thank you both very much, Katie.
Thank you,
and
Marcia.
Gray,
Thank you.
And go out and get this wonderful book. It's just fabulous. Thank you, and good night. Now, we need to talk just for a second.